Hello, Midnight Charlie Man, Patrick. Patrick. It's Saturday the 6th of April 2024 and it's about 4 p.m. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Did I not bring it down with me? You gotta be bloody kidding me. Oh, no, I did. Huh. Okay, so today, it's, I'm going to talk about this today. Okay, a lot to speak about. It's just, I watched this for the first time. It's an error. I watched this for the first time 2 days ago. I watched this for the first time 2 days ago, made in 1956, part of the John Wayne collection, part of the John Wayne classic collection of movies, and called The Searchers, made in 1956 through Warner Brothers with a budget of $3.75 million. Only because I actually wrote down some things this time. I wanted to avoid using my mobile, and I brought my glasses with me. Now, it has a budget of $3.75 million. It was based on a novel which came out in 1954 by Alan Lee May, distributed by Warner Brothers. Cinematographer is Winton C. Hock, and it was directed by John Ford. I think John Ford had a string of movies in that era for probably a decade or more. He could have been making movies for 20 years. This was released on the 15th of November 1956, and it stars the Duke. The Duke is, "You're not going to ride on my saddle. You're going to go your own way." No, that's a really bad. Well, that's a bad impression now of the Duke. "'Cause you ain't gonna ride on my saddle." No, stop, Pat, stop. Okay. Look, I watched this for the first time. I picked it up for $2 the other day in Rockdale from a second-hand store. It was $2 because I was briefly contemplating getting a collection on Blu-ray for about $60. I think it was $60 or $70, 5 movies, and I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. Because Rio Bravo had come to my attention. It was amongst Quentin Tarantino's favourite movies is Rio Bravo, and I thought, oh, I'll look that up. But anyway, this is, I kind of caught the tail end of this era in the sense that I was a 70s child, and what I liked to do was you still had the cowboys and Indians, the American what do you call it, Federal Army back then. What were they known as back in those days there when they had the civil wars and that? But back in the mid to late 70s, in the shops in Campsie, you could buy the cowboys and the Indians, the figures. And I remember at that age playing with having them all out, and you'd have the soldiers' outfits, and then you have the Indians and the horses, and it was fun to play with them. And my memories of, see, John Wayne, a big icon. He's huge, the Duke, and they're not gonna ride on my saddle. You're gonna follow me, 'cause I call the shots. Now, with John Wayne, yes, he's a iconic figure, probably on the same status as Elvis, and that era, it's quite an interesting era for film. I don't relate to it very well. I'm a bit disconnected from it. As I said, I came in on the tail end of it. I wasn't old enough to grasp it, but it's a whole era of filmmaking in itself, and very different acting and politics, when there was no such thing as political incorrectness at all. Political incorrectness started in 2015. It wasn't even a thing in the 1980s or the 1990s or the zeros. So there was no such thing as that, especially in the 1950s. But you had a different, it was a different era of completely different style of acting and a different era of directing and cinema. But the cinema photography in The Searchers is actually quite well, it's quite good, and it's well directed, it's well paced. That's kind of where it stops for me. How I felt about watching this movie, I had great anxiety and sadness while watching it, because what happens is I'm watching this movie for the first time, made in 1956, based in 1856, and what I think of is a very sort of Christian era where people dressed up to go to Sunday service or Mass on a Sunday, right? And I'm watching it, and I'm watching these actors, John Wayne, who almost everyone knows who John Wayne is. I know who John Wayne is, and I've probably seen a couple of his movies before, or at least scenes from his movies. Everyone in popular culture, he's such a significant figure in popular culture that everyone knows who John Wayne is. That light is okay, yes. And so I'm watching John Wayne. I'm not watching him from a hero point of view. I'm just saying what I think of him now in the moment, like what I think of him, and he is interesting. I find him to be interesting, and I couldn't help but think, the other actors I'm totally not familiar with at all, but they're interesting. I'm curious about them, but I couldn't help but think that many people must have idolized him and had him on the top shelf and revered him, like really looked up to him. Many people probably did. I'm just wondering how many people in that time and era, how many people thought a lot of him, or didn't think too much of him at all. Didn't, because it kind of would have been people who were like, probably would have been a lot of people who thought, oh, John Wayne, whatever. And there's other people who were, but he was a really big star in his time. And I think that every time such a different era, because every time one of his movies would come on TV in that time, I think everyone just embraced it and watched it and got entertainment from it, got enjoyment from it. In fact, I was looking up some information about it before I came down here, and some of the comments on Google, some of the comments for this movie are, oh, what a fantastic movie, loved it, brilliant acting, brilliant everything, which is not how I thought about it at all. I didn't think that way about it at all. And I'm like, yeah, grew up with this movie as a kid, I've seen it many times, what a wonderful film. John Wayne is fantastic, everything is fantastic about it. No, everything is not fantastic about it. Let me just stop it right there. Everything is not fantastic about this, but I'm going to get into that. And so you have John Wayne as a significant, big movie star in the from about 1945 through about because John Wayne passed in 1979. I did look up some of this information. John Wayne passed in 1979, so he didn't get to experience the 1980s. And I was looking up the numerous other cast in the film, and it turns out a couple of them, one of them got through to 2012, another one saw the 1980s, and someone else passed in 1989. My sadness comes from this. I get instant anxiety when I want. It's a mixture of anxiety, part excitement, curiosity, fascination, and what was going on in that time. Because this is 1956, but they were making a period piece about 1856, and because of society at that time, in that time frame, I don't think it wasn't that difficult for them to portray it because of where society was at that time. What I'm saying, there was no cell phones, and you had cinema, you had TV, you had radio. This is 1956. You had radio, you had TV, vinyl. There was no CDs. CD revolution hadn't started yet. All the fantastic music of the 1980s hadn't come out yet. But people were, in 1956, geez, what were people listening to? I'm just like an era. I don't connect. I don't have a big connection to the 50s at all. And as I said, I lost my track of thought. John Wayne, a huge, big, iconic figure. And I mean, just when he made the movie, it came out at the cinema, and that was a huge, big deal. Would have been a huge, big deal in 1956. 1956, we're only still on black and white TV, right? I'm fairly certain, I'm pretty sure we're only on black and white TV still. I haven't looked that up, but I'm pretty certain that it wasn't. I don't know where colour television came in to it all, but you had the premiere, this at the movies. The Searchers would have been a huge, big deal, and I'm sure that Bill Collins, Bill Collins presents. Tonight it's my pleasure tonight to present to you what a wonderful film from John Wayne, and John Wayne's The Searchers. Bill Collins would have presented The Searchers many times. And I probably actually, I'm certain at some point during the 1970s and the 80s I would have seen at least different bits and pieces of John Wayne movies. There's one called True Grit. I think John Wayne is in Rio Bravo. True Grit I think was made in 1976. I think it was one of the last movies he made. But John Wayne, a string of movies. A string of them. Oh, the part that made me sad, the part that gives me a bit of, it's a weird thing. I'm watching the movie, right? And I'm thinking, wow, all the history, all the changes in society that have taken place since then. The revolutions, the changes, mindset, spirituality, perception, the advancement of technology, everything that has taken place since then. So when these guys, when these actors, when these filmmakers were making this movie, there was a particular psychology, a particular philosophy in society. There was a particular mindset of that society had a particular group to it, a particular way of thinking, particular things that happened in society at the time. And I think with what took place in Hollywood movies at the time, largely, from my perspective, Christian themes were in them, just like Christian themes are in the Andy Hardy movies. Christian, John Ford being the director, and partly Christian orientated themes. There's some wonderful views of the. This is made in Texas. All I was noticing was it looked like the Grand Canyon. I'm sure certain parts of Texas do look like that, but I've really felt that Grand Canyon vibe, the way the rock, the way the scenery is in America, and I like it a lot. I find that greatly appealing. But I had a sadness about because I think of how many changes have taken place in society since that movie was made, and where that stands as a stamp in popular culture. And John Wayne, yeah, look, the style of acting back then. I think everybody in the cast, they acted well, yet it was over exuberant at times. Like you had that sheriff guy who comes in with his big voice, and that voice was too big. Like every time he speaks, everybody, I've got trauma from that. But comes in with his big voice, which I thought was quite a lot at times. And you've got, do I need to change that light? I can't tell. that's what that's what I was thinking about when I'm watching this, and I'm like, I had a sadness about it. John Wayne, the acting, that's right. There's no bad acting in it. It's just a very different style of acting. I mean, geez, by the time I really was, I mean, I was paying attention to movies from early age, in my teen years, but really was cluing into them really properly. You know, I was about 16 or 17. I mean, it was every Sunday, the Andy Hardy, and Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland and that, and you know, you got Meet Me in St. Louis, and all those times watching Casablanca. Casablanca, one of my favourites from childhood. I didn't understand the adult themes in it, but I just loved everything about it. And then when I was able, first time I was able to understand Casablanca, probably about my mid to late 20s. I was like, oh, I get it, what's going on. But before that, it was just everything about the cinematography, everything about it, except some of the adult themes went a bit over my head. And of course, got the African Queen. I loved the African Queen. That was on TV all the time when I was growing up. And you got the Maltese Falcon. That was fun. Bogart, Humphrey Bogart, maybe he potentially my, and Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman, oh, jeez. Humphrey Bogart, maybe he's my favourite from that era. John Wayne and the acting. Look, this movie is a complete. The Native American Indians, who I've always liked and always had a soft spot for, were treated so badly in that era. The Native American Indians are not treated well at all. And there's and a couple of moments in this movie, the first moment where I always wanted to stop watching completely. Let me check the time. I've been going for about 12 minutes, have I? Let me check the time on this, because I've been going for about 12 minutes. I think I've got my glass. I've been going for 17 minutes, right? Now, the exploitation of the Native American Indians, I've never liked it. And how in these westerns, white man attacks the Native American Indians. He represses and does bad things to the Native American Indians. He treats them like the enemy. It's a really, they're not portrayed well. The Native American Indians were never portrayed well in the golden age of Hollywood. And there's, I've always wanted to talk about this buffoon. I mean, look, he was one of the most unlikable characters I've ever seen in a movie. And his name is Jeffrey Hunter, who played Martin. Jeffrey Hunter, my goodness. He represents the pre-80s redneck era. He was the first installation of that era, the belligerent brute, unintelligent, testosterone-filled, clueless, he comes across as elegant, but he's far removed from being elegant. Also belligerent and psychopathic at times. Like there's a few moments where he's tender and almost concerned and caring, and at the next moment he goes off wildly into this almost this rage, and it's like, what the heck is going on with this guy? What the heck is going on? All I can think of is the American redneck. All I can think of was the generation of rednecks that would follow. There was a very sad moment in this movie. A very sad moment in this movie where, really sad moment, which I found to be terrible. He got people on Google saying what a fantastic movie it is. I loved every moment. I didn't love every moment of this movie at all. Can't people open their eyes and see what was happening? Beulah Archuleta, the Indian woman, she plays an Indian woman in this film. She's dressed in red, and basically, spoiler alert, what happened is Jeffrey Hunter, it's easy to hold a piece, but I don't like holding up the phone. Jeffrey Hunter, what happens is he unknowingly participates in this ceremony of marriage. John Wayne has great humour while watching this John Wayne's watching this ceremony take place, and Jeffrey Hunter has no idea what's going on, and basically what happens is end up marrying this Indian woman. And I thought it was kind of cute actually. She's cute. She has a lot of charm about her. I thought a great deal of charm about her. I sort of liked her straight away. And what happens is John Wayne and Jeffrey Hunter leave that camp. They leave. And the next scene taking place is that she's behind them, and Jeffrey, he's so aggressive, Jeffrey Hunter returns away and says, "What do you want? What do you want? Get away, no, go away." And John Wayne's laughing. He's like, "You do realise you're talking to your wife?" And Jeffrey's like, "What the heck? What do you mean?" He said, "Well, that ceremony back there was a marriage ceremony. She's your wife now." And he treats her so badly. He's like, "What?" He gets really aggressive about it, really unnecessarily aggressive about it. And what happens is they set camp they stopped at a place and set camp. Oh, it's a really sad moment. It's a really sad moment. Jeffrey decides to go to sleep. The Indian woman decides to lay next to him, and he's huffing and puffing about it. And then maybe the saddest part of the movie for me was he gets really upset with her that she's next to him. She decides wants to go to sleep. She decides to lay down next to him. What does he do? He gets up, and he gets up, and with 2 feet he kicks her as hard as he possibly can, so that she'll get away from him. I'm like, it was an incredibly sad moment in the movie for me. Incredibly sad. I wanted to stop watching. I thought, you know what? I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to keep watching this movie. But this guy represents the brute, the redneck brute, the unintelligent. He represents the unintelligent figure in American cinema. He represents the ruffian, the uneducated. He represents the he represents the downfall and the gap between the Native American Indians and the white man. He represents the aggressor and the oppressor. He represents the I'm just watching it, and how people can go on Google and say, "I was highly entertained by this, but what a fantastic movie! I loved everything about it. I loved everyone in it. I've seen it 10 times." It was like, are you missing something? Did that scene not affect you? Did it not impact you? Because I saw it and I'm like, I was just like, I'm like, I mean, they probably had a stunt woman in there and all that, but that's beside the. And I just felt wounded by that. She was to have to pick her up. John Wayne comes over and they pick her up. And I mean, this is it. This is in a time in society when they did things like this and no one thought twice about it. There's just sometimes things happen in films and I'm like, so that got to me, and I was disliking Jeffrey Hunter before this moment, his character, and after that moment I just went, I thought, and then she leaves the camp, because in the morning I wake up and she's gone. I'm like, yeah. It is now later in the evening. It's later in the evening. I was upstairs and I've actually put this together, and shock up. She didn't actually leave because of that. I didn't bring my notes up. The Indian woman, the woman that was playing the Indian woman. What happened was, and when he kicked her, he was on him because he was horizontal and he with 2 feet, and she rolled down a hill, a small hill. And what happens is, fairly immediately after that, John Wayne and Jeffrey Hunter, they approach and confront her because she very likely knows the whereabouts of this girl or has seen the girl that has gone missing, and they confront her aggressively. Well, Jeffrey confronts her aggressively, and then the next morning she's left camp, and then And then Jeffrey says to John Wayne, he says, "Oh, she's gone back to her people." And he said, "No, she can't do that now because it's she can't return there because marriage gone wrong, or whichever. It's not a good thing." Uh, the just the acting back in those days it's interesting yet weird. Oh, that's what I was going to say. This movie gave me insight into that area, insight into the philosophy of popular culture at the time, why filmmakers put this in the script and why they put this in the storyline, why they did particular things and did particular actions within the storyline. Because it's very primitive at times, extremely primitive, even caveman-like, and the technique with their acting is quite interesting. Yeah, it is quite, and John Wayne's curious to watch. John Wayne's curious to watch the joke, and so after they confront her, and it's so oh, and the Indians, they're giving the impression that the Indians have scalped. They scalped the family. That is a distinct impression. Although to me that's just it's really just a statement of you know the problems that were happening between white man and the Indians at the time, the Cherokee. There was just problems. They well, because the white man had treated the American and the native Indians so badly, and the Cherokee, the Indians have you know, fought back, retaliated. I'm interested in seeing more John Ford movies, but that's why I wanted to come back down into that. As I was saying, and cause when they pick her up, the face is on camera. She's pretty upset about that. And just like caveman, he represents the caveman. That's the word I had you say. Jeffrey Hunter in this movie, the Martin guy, he represents the redneck caveman, the belligerent, unintelligent brute. And because there's a girl, there's a woman back home. There's a woman, I don't know why she must be with this. Of course, when Alan May wrote this novel, well, we're coming up to 25 minutes now. Oh, I've got 4 minutes left to speak on this. When Alan May wrote this, I think he was writing about the situation in society at the time, based on his life experiences, based on other people's life experiences. So this novel would have been based on things that were occurring in the time in society, and on what actually happened to people. And that the Native American Indians were just portrayed so badly, and they're portrayed as the instant enemy in these movies. And John Wayne had a lot to do with that, and the fact that because from what I've heard, he was a gentleman. When the camera was off, he was a gentleman, and yet involved in these script scenarios, which entertainment for people. I mean, I find them curious. I'm interested in watching them because I can learn things. Some of the things that take place, like I'm really deeply saddened when she was killed and he kicked her. It was I was deeply saddened by that. The caveman brute. I think John Wayne is an interesting character. He's a very interesting character. And what happens at the beginning of the film is that you've got a family homestead. John Wayne is the uncle who returns home after being at war for a number of years, and he receives some sort of cross, some sort of military cross, and his little niece she says something, and he gives her the military cross. I'm like, understand the hidden meaning of this. I'm understanding the hidden meaning of this. I'm like, you're giving it across, right? Okay. I'm understanding the hidden significance of this. Anyway, please, I don't have much time on that. I want to keep recording. We started it now. Hopefully I've got time on here. I've got to move this sticky. I've got to move that because I keep rocking it. The family, right? The women in the family. Everyone's a bit... They hear a noise outside and the women are just scared and lock the place up. Like they lock it up. Even though it's only wood blocking the door, but they lock it up. Fearful to go outside, but they send their daughter outside. They send her outside. Indeed, a guy comes along and he takes her. I mean, how does that make sense? Because the mother says to the guy opens the wooden panels, there are windows, and they put her outside. She climbs outside. She goes out there, and then the guy gets her, like one of the so-called enemy. And I'm like, how is this making sense? She's taken away. John Wayne turns up. He goes looking for her. Jeffrey Hunter joins him. John Wayne wants to work by himself. I only work by myself. He works by himself. They join him anyway. He says, you follow me, don't question me or anything, do what I say. They go after him. John Wayne's already wanted for something else. They go into they pull the guns on the Indians a few times and they shoot at them a few times. And John Wayne gets carried away a few times and just starts firing with his gun quite rapidly at the Indians. And these parts sadden me deeply. And no, I'm not. Yes, this film was supposed to be a piece of entertainment, but to me, it's not really a piece of entertainment. If he fires, maybe he's making a statement. Because, oh my gosh, this is one point of the movie, and Jeffrey actually tries to stop John Wayne because John Wayne's firing, shooting continuously, unnecessarily at the Indians, and Jeffrey actually tries to stop him, and John Wayne's like, the daughter is eventually found. She's eventually found, and she says, oh, I'm Indian now, I'm Indian. And John Wayne, the thing is, John Wayne, like, a couple of his relatives within this family are part Cherokee, and John Wayne wants nothing to do with it. He's like, no, you're not my family, you're not my family, you've got Indian in you, you're not my family. And so, partially, it's so weird to watch this, and how black and white, one-dimensional this type of thing was back in the 1950s, and what was put together for a story and of a story. And I'm wondering what the outside thought, like I'm wondering what the real world thoughts were for it at that time in society, because what was put on screen was pretty drastic, it was pretty intense. It's like, you got a bit of Indian, you got a bit of Indian in you, got a bit of Indian in you, and it's like, what am I watching here? Like, what am I watching? I'm like, what am I watching? And it's like, and it's all twisted in a way because Jeffrey Hunter then defends his Cherokee in him, and John Wayne doesn't want anything to do with him. And Jeffrey has quite a few aggressive moments throughout the film, as does John Wayne. So the acting kind of goes all over the place in a sense. Goes all over the place. My goodness. But just I've always liked the Cherokees, the Native American Indians. I've always had a big soft spot for them, and I always liked them. And as the years went by, I found out that they weren't treated well. They're portrayed portrayed in the wrong way, weren't portrayed in an accurate way in the American films in the 1950s. I don't know my complete history of it. I just know they weren't portrayed well, very badly, and especially in films where the white man wants to pull out his pistol and his rifle and just start shooting at them. And yeah. So the searchers find her in the end. She says she's Cherokee, but at the very end she's decided. At the very end she says, "Yes, Jeffrey, I remember you as my brother. I remember you. I'll come back home now." Or it was reminded me of Dances with Wolves when they say to Kevin Costner, "You turned, didn't you? You turned, didn't you?" And reminded me of that. I haven't seen Dances with Wolves for about 30 years. Dances with Wolves, yeah. Kevin Costner's heyday. But Kevin Costner ended up doing quite a few westerns, I think. The Searchers, 1956, 3.75 million budget, probably had a big opening weekend. Wouldn't be surprised if John Wayne had turned up on a horse to the premiere. I don't know if he did, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did. That lovely woman in it. A couple of women in it who were quite nice, actually. Oh, and there's a really funny man. There's a really funny man in this. His name was really funny man. Practically Hank Warden, funny guy. Yeah, I've written Hank Warden, funny guy. He's a bald guy, funny, offbeat and funny. Offbeat and funny. I'll stop rattling this. John Warden, offbeat and funny. And I enjoyed the Mexican part. There's a part where they stop at this tavern, and it's just the way it's done is very Mexican, and I like Mexican attire and Mexican settings. I find I'm quite sort of attracted to that, and Rob Zombie has had that style in a couple of his films, such as Dusk Till Dawn, Three from Hell, and not so much for House of a Thousand Corpses, as partially in Devil's Rejects, but Three from Hell was very Mexican orientated, as was Dusk Till Dawn. And look, the search was interesting. Did I get enjoyment from it? I wouldn't say I got enjoyment from it, but it was a very interesting watch. And the landscaping, the cinematography was good in it. I enjoyed the cinematography, and I get partially fascinated and a bit of a sadness out of the timestamps of that culture at that time. And it gives me a bit of anxiety. So I'm watching a real mixture of emotions, and how very heavily Christian themes at that time. Heavily Christian themes. No bad acting, just a lot of, I think, unnecessary overacting. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to wrap that up there. For the searches, I'm going to wrap that up. I'm going to conclude it now. Directed by John Ford. If you want to look up his other movies, John Ford's probably done a string of westerns. Would this fall into the spaghetti westerns? Well, that was the Clint Eastwood movies that fell into the spaghetti westerns. Sergio, who was it? Leon Sergio who directed Clint Eastwood. And some of those Clint Eastwood movies for a few dollars more, and Pale Rider, and Good, Bad, the Ugly. But I don't think this is a spaghetti western. I think John Wayne falls into a different category of that. Thank you for watching. Okay. Alright. Thank you for watching. Very quickly, there's a ton of 70s movies that I saw back in the day. When I was a kid, ton of 70s movies, which well, people don't watch TV anymore, they watch Netflix. But back in the late 70s and the 80s, I saw all those 70s movies, which are very difficult to come by now. Very difficult to come by. And then late at night you had a mixture of all those 50s and 60s horror films. I'm not a great big fan of the 50s and 60s era. I appreciate them. not exactly my cup of tea. I do appreciate them to an extent, but there were so many 70s and stuff, or so many movies of the 70s that I saw. Some of the movies I saw all the way through, and some I saw bits and pieces of. They don't show them anymore nowadays, and very difficult to track them down on DVD because they don't have them in the second-hand stores, but they just got everything from many things from the 90s and zeros, mainly from the zeros, going into the zeros. But if you want to track that stuff down, you've got to go on eBay and it's bloody what size of money. Anyway, yeah, so